We don't often think about the cleaners, caretakers, and janitors of the world cleaning up our messes and having to deal with the horrors of public bathrooms. Thank you for your service. However, the most unsung heroes of them all are the cleaners for video game levels, mopping up the remains of NPCs, replacing the stolen items, and repairing the numerous locations you've smashed, crashed, or otherwise exploded your way through. What's that, you say? Video games don't have cleaners? Next you'll be telling me setups don't have real wizards either. Come on, pull the other one. Idiot. Regardless, the job of tidying up after video game players is a tough one, but someone has to do it, and I will be guiding you through the most difficult to tidy levels of them all if you ever find yourself in that kind of profession. It always pays to know these things after all. Should we look at some? Let's look at some. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 video game locations that must be a nightmare to clean. Number 10. Aperture Laboratories, Portal Series. To say that Aperture Laboratories is in a bit of a state is an understatement of whatever century it is that the series takes place in. While it has been abandoned for many years after the disastrous events of Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, the place hasn't been entirely devoid of life as GLaDOS continues on her testing of the portal gun, meaning that maintenance is still very much required. Shell's initial journey through the testing chambers in Portal 1 showed a slightly shabby but still well-kept state of affairs, showing that someone or something was keeping things in order, whether it was an unseen robot assistant, GLaDOS herself, or perhaps some poor unfortunate caretaker constantly taken in and out of stasis to clean up whatever remains of the most recent test subject who failed the chambers. The test chambers themselves are difficult enough to clean, with acid pits, high-energy pellets, long falls if you don't have leg braces like Chell that is, and a homicidal supercomputer constantly insulting you, but the numerous office spaces that you can see through the windows in certain test chambers must be an absolute nightmare, with no humans having been in there for many, many years. Also, Ratman has taken some tips from Julian Assange apparently, because he's made a real mess behind the walls of the test chambers with no apparent regard for the other trapped inhabitants, but considering they aren't accessible, it'd be forgiven if you'd skipped over those areas. Portal 2 showed us more of the areas outside of the testing chambers, including several of the derelict offices that have been broken into by birds who had made nests, and have also made a real mess of the floor. However, considering that GLaDOS has been offline for years by that point, none of the typical cleaning measures had been followed for a while, so hopefully, now she's back online and in charge of the facility once again, she can start getting some semblance of order back into the place. I do pity the poor test subject who has to help her clean it all up though. Number 9. Bowser's Castle, Mario series. As we've said before on the channel, Bowser is hardly the best person to work for, and cleaning up after him must be a pretty tall order too. Dragons aren't really known for their cleanliness, preferring to gather things in large piles than put them away anywhere, but the state of his bedroom is really the least of your worries. Castles are difficult enough to clean in the first place, with nooks and crannies all over the place to keep an eye on for wayward cobwebs and grime, and with the cavernous ceilings and ornate stone detailing that litter the place, you'll need more than a cherry picker in order to reach them. Also, there aren't enough chimney brushes in the world to clean all of the pipes running throughout the place. Who did your plumbing, Bowser? Because I doubt it was Mario, considering that would be a monstrous conflict of interest, and considering he keeps on busting in every 5 minutes to thwart your latest princess napping scheme, although... If you could take a look while you're down there, that would save me a lot. No? Okay. Oh, he's gone. The dusting is not the only thing that needs doing though, what with having to clean up the remnants of smashed bricks and the carnage that bob-ombs cause every time they explode. Look, Mario, this place is a listed building. If a block looks breakable, that's because it is over 400 years old with immense historic value. Please, be aware of your history. Bowser isn't the only resident of the castle to clean up after either, with piranha plants infesting the pipework and Hammer Bros never picking up their projectiles, but Dry Bones proves to be the biggest challenge, falling apart constantly, and while they do reassemble themselves shortly afterwards, they do tend to leave bone dust and occasionally whole limbs behind. Whose arm is this? Number 8. The Vaults, Fallout series. The Vaults are the arcs of the Fallout series on which the future of humanity was rested, containing the unirradiated humans lucky enough to have gained a space, but my god, are they a faff around to clean. Vault 111 may be easy enough with all of the occupants in stasis and therefore unable to create mess, although the same can't be said for the scientists keeping an eye on them. Yes, I know they're all dead now, and no, I am not sympathetic, especially considering they left their skeletons lying about all over the place. First Dry Bones and now you, give me a break! However, the other vaults, like Vault 8, 15, and 76, all have to deal with people living in them for a good couple of centuries. They all probably had cleaning rotas, but there's always going to be that one person who consistently forgets to do their part in the hopes that you'll end up just taking it on yourself. Especially Vault 29, with all the inhabitants being younger than 15, so that's a no-go zone. You don't go there. Number 7. Every bloody building! Mirror's Edge series. When climbing, chalk is a very useful tool to have with you, as it can improve your grip and gain you extra purchase on difficult ledges and handholds. However, with chalk comes a lot of dust, and with freerunners and climbers infesting both New City and the City of Glass from Mirror's Edge and Mirror's Edge Catalyst respectively, it isn't hard to imagine the state of the roofs and ledges, especially considering that climbers tend to get to hard-to-reach places that wouldn't be cleaned, so those areas around the city are probably encrusted in years-old dust. It being called the City of Glass isn't a misnomer either. The place is a shining beacon of neo-futuristic architecture, and with a lot of glass comes a lot of work for the window cleaners. Hopefully, the city regime managed to work out some kind of deal on that front. Number 6. The Houses. Fortnite Battle Royale. It's never explained what the Battle Royale island is and why it's abandoned, but while no one may be living there because it was sucked into a black hole. It might not even exist anymore, actually, but the houses are still used as a place to duck and cover while you're trying to battle royale the best. And that means that someone must have to keep the place clean and tidy. Some of that includes replacing the walls and objects that have been smashed for resources by players and sweeping up all the dropped weapons and tat dropped by them when they get killed. Luckily, dead players don't leave corpses, so that is, that's one less thing to do. The turnover time for the cleaning must be a challenge, as it seems the matches leave only a few minutes before they start throwing themselves out of that magic sky bus again, but I think we're twisting suspension of disbelief enough as it is. Still, whatever company, society, or regime may be running this deathmatch island, they must have an unlimited supply of pre-grown trees, dumpsters, and abandoned cars, all made out of that strange, wobbly material that breaks after like 3 swings of an axe. Squishy. Number 5. Sen's Fortress. Dark Souls. While it is more of a gateway to Anor Londo, it is still a Dark Souls level, and thus Sen's Fortress is not a forgiving place, riddled with booby traps, trapdoors, and guillotines swinging from the ceiling. Also try to avoid the massive tar pit in the middle. But as always, there has to be someone that must sweep up all the broken pottery and keep the floor signs and bloodstains visible. The Titanite demons in the pit below treat this place like a hotel, leaving their victims' remains just lying around all over the place and not doing anything about the tar, which just gets everywhere. This is a pigsty, Titanite. Do you act like this in your own home? I think this might actually be their home, though. The other inhabitants of the fortress are hardly any friendlier, however, with Rickard constantly going on about his royal lineage and using heavy armor as an excuse not to do any of the sweeping, but Big Hat Logan is still hanging around and is a good guy to chat with, even if his big hat does muffle his hearing somewhat. But at least he cleans up after himself, Titanite, Mr. Demon. Number 4. Brennenburg Castle. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. As we said before for Bowser's Castle, castles are a right faff to keep clean, but at least with his, all you had to deal with was piranha plants and some unhelpfully placed lava pits. In Alexander von Brennenburg's castle, you'll be lucky to even keep track of your feather duster. With hundreds of rooms, including archive rooms, wine cellars, laboratories, halls, dungeons, and the less said about the sewers, the better, the Prussian castle would be hard enough to clean normally, but a mysterious force called the Shadow inhabits the place and leaves its own trail of disgusting, fleshy growths all over the walls and floors, and I've tried leaving it to soak overnight, but it just refuses to come off. I don't know what to do. Also, everyone employed there ends up going crazy and either running away or going missing, so, bear that in mind as well. Number 3. Tetris. It is truly surprising what builds up dust, and on the Tetris playing field it can be a dangerous safety hazard. I know it isn't necessarily a place you would consider keeping clean, it's not like anyone lives there, but isn't it nice to come back to a tidy place when you want to have a quiet game of Tetris? Some of the blocks, such as the L and T shapes, don't need much dusting as they're rotated every which way to get them to fit, but the square blocks especially collect a whole lot of nonsense on their top-facing side, and even if the dirt and dust did fall off the blocks, it still ends up all over the floor you have to sweep up after a game over. Not only that, and I'm afraid to potentially ruin Tetris for a lot of you here, but spiders really love the top corners of the playing area, and having to climb up the walls of blocks to reach the webs is a massive health and safety hazard and a real pain in the neck. Also, don't get me started on the guys who are feeding the blocks down from the top. They keep throwing their used gum and wrappers down after their shift. Scraping it off the blocks should be their job. Number 2. Talos 1. Prey 2017. Telos 1 is a gigantic space station in orbit around the moon, acting as a science station to study the mysterious Typhon organisms and to make plasmids, neuromods. Oh. It is a massive place, being big enough to contain God knows how many scientists and crew, so there would obviously be a cleaning team and caretakers employed to make sure everything was tidy. However, that doesn't make the job any easier, with 3 levels making up the city-sized spaceship, covering crew quarters, laboratories, lobbies, airlocks, arboretums, the bridge, and all of the mechanical shafts. It's an awful lot of work. The outside of the ship also probably needs maintenance, especially considering that it's going to get covered in space debris while it's in orbit around the moon, and it'll likely need a new paint job at some point. While dust doesn't settle very much in zero gravity, the majority of the station works to Earth-like gravity rules, and thus there is going to be dust and grime building up constantly, and while the laboratories have to be kept sterilized by the scientists, not all of the inhabitants are so courteous outside of the science rooms. And yes, I found a page literally explaining how dust collects on the International Space Station. The internet truly is a wonderful place. Number 1. The Baker House, Resident Evil 7. What the Baker family were thinking when they brought on a maid, I will never know, and neither will I understand how they ever managed to afford it, what with them making a living solely on kidnapping, murder, and gruesome family bonding. But I suppose that someone has to keep the house from imploding from the sheer state of itself, so here I am. The house is a derelict plantation ranch, long beyond saving as a structure, infested with mold, which does nothing to prevent the insect population, and with the majority of the house apparently only accessible through keys attached to various dead animals hidden around it, including a crow, a snake, and a scorpion, with all corresponding doors decorated in a similar way. Nice. Also, the quality of light around the house is, and I'm going to say it, ridiculous. I swear, there isn't a bulb over 40 watts in the entire property, so seeing any kind of detail is next to impossible. This is incredibly bad for your eyesight, so it's no wonder this place is such a mess. One useful thing, however, that I will give it is that the staple Resident Evil impossible traveling storage box thing returns, meaning that you don't have to carry your Hoover or mop and bucket up and down the stairs constantly, which is only a good thing. Getting it down to the tar pits in Zen Fortress was hard enough. And that's our list. Have you come across any places in video games that you think need a good cleaning? Let us know in the comments below and we'll pass it on to the relevant cleaning crew. You can follow myself and TripleJump on Twitter here, and while you're at it, why not support the things you enjoy by having a look at our Patreon? Finally, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and thanks for watching.